couldn't decide what game I wanted to play.
Over the years, the medium of gaming has grown into quite the huge juggernaut. It's come a long way, spanning multiple unique genres and a countless number of games. There's bound to be something that'll appeal to you, regardless of who you are or whether you prefer mustard or ketchup. By the way, Ketchup Master Race, I will fight you on that. In the case of myself, I absolutely have my personal favorites, both as standalone titles and the video topic, game franchises. It was a pretty big pain in the ass to order this video due to my favorites having a frequent tendency to change on the flip of a dime, and the fact that I seem to get into something new pretty often. But let's focus on what my personal order is here and now. Only real ground rules is that a series or franchise needs to have a minimum of 2 games in total, and I have to have played at least 2 of the games in total. I try and keep my game library as diverse as possible, so hopefully that'll show in the video. Let's try and be optimistic about that. Somebody has to be in these troubled times. You take stealth, 3D platforming, a raccoon, fuse it all together, and what do you get? I feel very unclean. By the way, Sly Cooper is pretty damn sweet. When it comes to 3D platformers, I'm practically a junkie for them, and here we've got the first and far from last platforming series on the countdown. What makes this series unique compared to other 3D platformers is that it takes the typical tropes and heavily bases them around stealth. This fusion of both gameplay styles works like an absolute dream, making all 4 games play smooth like butter. The basic premise of each game is about Sly Cooper and his best friends Bentley and Murray working together as a band of thieves. Haha, very funny. Traveling the world to stop criminals and steal shit. Initially starting out as basically Crash Bandicoot with a focus on stealth, following entries were structured more like a sandbox game, which I'd say was a change made for the better, with each game improving on the last. Great level design, well-made gameplay mechanics, varied settings, creative missions, and fun boss battles all make for some of the most enjoyment you can get in a 3D platformer and stealth game. May I also emphasize how the series just oozes with style? From the well-animated 2D cutscenes to the original trilogy cell shading and Thieves in Time's more realistic visuals, the franchise in general is absolutely gorgeous to look at and well polished on top of that. Even story manages to be one of the series' strengths, with a main cast of lovable and well fleshed out protagonists, villains that range from goofy, sinister, terrifying, and one-offs that are enjoyable to be around when on screen. Surprisingly, there is some pretty strong character development and writing in what's essentially a fun, silly little story about the thievius misadventures of a raccoon, hippo, and turtle. Too bad a Sly 5 probably won't happen anytime soon.
We live in a universe where Knack and Bubsy get new games, but Sly Cooper doesn't. God has abandoned us.
Independent decision-making is a great thing, and that's exactly why Kimmy Nuketron doesn't allow it. It's also pretty cool when video games incorporate a system of choice into their core design. Whether it be Infamous with Good and Bad Karma, or the Paragon and Renegade system in Mass Effect, I always welcome mechanics of the sort as a great addition that add more layers to a game. At least when they aren't half-assed, pointless, and fucking dumb. In the case of Deus Ex though, such features are taken 20 extra miles at the very least. What makes this series great and unique is that it offers a form of game design you just don't see very often, whether it be past or present. Each game in the franchise intertwines stealth, first-person shooter, and RPG elements together, making an experience that allows for different styles of play depending on preference. One person might decide to go loud and get into a firefight with enemies, while somebody else might choose to sneak their way around them or find another path, avoiding them completely. The odds that you choose to upgrade yourself with also play major game-changing roles in the experience of one playthrough of a Deus Ex game. For the most part, all of this is placed within fantastically crafted level design, where you'll always be able to find a use for every one of your abilities. The whole decision-making aspect of the franchise also applies pretty much the same amount to the story as well. While you can't exactly alter the main points or course of the plot, because the butterfly effect can go suck on a cactus, The various possible narrative outcomes for every given situation all feel natural and change the manner in which future events within the story play out. There's no definite right, wrong, good, or bad way to do anything in a Deus Ex game. Every situation is what you choose to make it, with different advantages and disadvantages to the outcome. And that's pretty much the beauty of the franchise at large. All while taking place in a unique and heavily detailed dystopian cyberpunk setting around a pretty cool and at times thought-provoking story. Though I do admittedly find it difficult to take the whole Illuminati aspect of the story seriously, considering that I'd sooner believe that the Earth is flat.
Earth is obviously a cube, now quit your lunacy and prove something with actual basis and fact.
Though I'm not gonna let that one petty grievance take away anything from my enjoyment. The franchise is still an outstanding example of game design that couldn't hurt to be implemented in more titles on the market.
No, I did not die.
Ubisoft, I don't get you. I really don't. How is it that you have such a wealth of creative talent at your disposal, yet you essentially make yourselves the poster child of soulless corporatism in gaming? One moment you create some of the most imaginative games on the market, but then you pump out yet another Assassin's Creed game just in time for the annual holiday season. What I'm getting at is that I'd like to see less Division and more Prince of Persia. Mainly talking about the reboot saga composed of these games due to me not playing the others, but I'm not complaining since they're all some of the best adventure platformers I've ever played. Okay, except Forgotten Sands, but it was alright. The platforming and parkour mechanics will likely be familiar to people who have played Uncharted or Assassin's Creed, though they differ by being intentionally based more in reality. You cannot just climb up any surface by holding the run button or jumping up at superhuman speed. Every move needs to be properly planned and timed to ensure that you don't get sliced in half and your face doesn't become the pavement's new BFF. The ingenious level design utilizes the central mechanics phenomenally with creative obstacles and traps that you need to work around. A bit of trial and error is involved, but that's okay since you're able to rewind time in the events that you do fuck something up, albeit for a limited duration and number of times to ensure balance. Also, water apparently solves everything in this universe. Take damage, death chasing you, demon possessing your body? Water will deal with all of that while simultaneously curing cancer.
I'm fucking invincible!
Combat also requires you to be strategic if your name isn't Forgotten Sands, as you need to block, keep your distance, and go in for the kill at the right time during every sequence. Each game is absolutely gorgeous to the senses with the Aladdin, Lawrence of Arabia-esque setting and enchanting soundtrack. Base all of this around a very strong overarching narrative spanning the course of the entire series, and you've got a franchise for the ages and some of the finest work to come from Ubisoft.
Remember when Capcom didn't make dumb decisions all the time? Me neither. But at the very least, their mistakes occasionally resulted in a happy accident, one of those being Devil May Cry.
Initially starting out as a Resident Evil game before getting reworked due to being too action-oriented, a joke that pretty much wrote itself for a good while, Devil May Cry influenced an entire genre all its own and to this day is one of the best hack-and-slash franchises out there. Whether the main character is a badass or just an ass, each game involves you fighting demonic threats, typically under control of a demigod or some random tool, or both. The combat offered in a Devil May Cry game for the most part has quite a bit of depth and strategy in comparison to a lot of similar titles. Every function on your controller, from all of the buttons down to even the directions on the left analog stick, play a major factor in your survival and rank at the end of a stage. While the original game is still very good, when the series found better footing with 3, well, the combo potential is batshit insane, and becoming pro enough to pull off some of the more complicated techniques is a great feeling. If you want a good challenge, you'll for sure find it here, especially with the boss fights and unlockable difficulty modes. All I'm gonna say is good freaking luck playing through Hell in Hell mode. Writing-wise, the series might not always be Shakespeare. In fact, it can get pretty bad. When the writing hits, it hits bullseye. From all the comedic and ridiculously over-the-top moments to some that are surprisingly serious and emotional, the games always manage to put a smile on my face, whether it be intentional or, well, the reboot. I can't help but adore each game's visuals as well. The original canon's gothic aesthetic and DMC's saturated colors are gorgeous, and each game feels graphically distinct, with even the weaker entries in the franchise looking pretty solid. When I want to play something just to have fun or kill time, Devil May Cry is one of the series that immediately comes to mind, and I don't intend on that changing anytime in the future. I just hope that Capcom is willing to let the series keep going after they're done pissing everybody off. Nostalgia is a beautiful thing. Unless you're me, of course. In that case, you were stuck with Shrek 2 on GBA, increasingly shitty SpongeBob games, and Barbie Horse Adventure's Wild Horse Rescue. Kids today will hopefully never be exposed to such filth. On a more positive note, not everything I played as a kid was complete junk looking back. I mean, young me got to play Crash Bandicoot, so blame childhood worth it? Nah, not really. Back when I was young, I was super obsessed with Crash and spent a countless number of hours with each game I owned, whether it be main series or spin-off. They all played a huge part in why I'm into gaming nowadays, and even today, I'd say the games hold up phenomenally. Starting out by taking the style of a 2D platformer like Mario or Sonic and placing it on a 3-dimensional plane, this resulted in the franchise creating a style of 3D platformer all its own. It might not have been as influential as, say, Mario 64, though I won't be a jackass and act like this makes the series any less fantastic. The basic premise involves you going from point A to point B in linear stages and eventually stopping the main villain, Dr. Cortex, from taking over the world. Simple shit, but smooth controls, colorful visuals, great varied level design, and a cast full of fun characters, with the occasional Gorilla Monkey Amos face, all make for a charming series that's simple to pick up, play, and just have fun with. Aside from a few, it's hard for me to consider any game from the franchise to be legitimately bad. I love the entire main series up to Twinsanity. I'd gladly take part in playing the spin-offs, especially when it involves other people, and hell, even Crash of the Titans I thought was fun regardless of its many flaws. I did do a top 5 on my favorite Crash games, just in case you're curious about the order. Throughout everything the franchise has been through, like the weird experimental 2000s era and the near decade-long hiatus where we got nothing but mobile garbage and some random Panda OC, what the fuck? My optimism toward Crash making a comeback has always stayed strong, and I cannot express how grateful I am that it paid off this year with the Insane Trilogy. The games are simple fun to the core, and that's really all you need sometimes. Metal Gear, what an interesting beast of a franchise we've got right here. I'm not saying that as a negative, mind you, just that it's really hard to find any other game similar to it. I mean, if you were to describe a stealth series with social commentary on war and advancing technology while simultaneously incorporating a bunch of Japanese weeb shit, your family would probably isolate you from the rest of society.
Joke's on them, I already do that myself. Get wrecked, Mom.
Even more weird than the basic premise of the franchise is that it's actually brilliant. While not always perfect, I'd say each main game is fantastic in one way or another. Putting aside a rather unconventional control scheme, at least in the titles predating 4, the series is home to some of the most well-polished and varied stealth gameplay you could ask for. Helping this is each game offering its own unique gameplay feature to make room for more depth and strategy, effectively distinguishing one game from another. From the camo and survival mechanics in 3, to the fun gadgets in 4, to the companions in 5. Throughout it all is an overarching narrative that's just as engaging emotionally as it is ridiculous and convoluted, I'll fully admit. I completely understand if one can't exactly get into the story for those reasons, along with the large abundance of cutscenes in each game, 4 especially, but personally, I love it. Characters are interesting for the most part, and some pretty heavy themes based around war and advancing technology are tackled, though at the same time, the games do have fun with themselves with a pretty campy tone and a plethora of silly moments, even in 5 where everything is supposedly all super serious and dark. Writing might not always be at the top of its game, but at its best, it's fucking gold. Oh yeah, and outside the solid games, Rising is a pretty fun, if flawed hack and slash that's definitely worth checking out as well. Things may be going going sour for Metal Gear with the Phantom Pain sadly never being properly finished, and Survive looking to be the most generic video game ever made of all time. Seriously, it looks like a collage of cliché, but anything bad that may come from the series in the future will never overshadow the abundance of good it brought before Konami became a low-hanging fruit. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to post some clever #FuckKonami Twitter posts while making funny jokes about Harambe and doing some sweet tricks with my fidget spinner. Feel free to suggest anything for me to do to be even more devoid of creativity. I don't talk about Nintendo very often. Nothing against them, it's just that I don't get much of an opportunity to do so. So while they've certainly made some pretty big missteps, it's hard to deny they released some outstanding games, a number of which are personal favorites of mine. As for my favorite Nintendo franchise overall, easy, Metroid, no doubt about it. My initial experience with the franchise was in 2012 with Other M, but
No! We do not discuss such topics in this household, child.
it wasn't until this year I got more into Metroid with the Prime Trilogy and the recent Samus Returns. While there's still some other Metroid games I'd love to play but can't because the life of a broke college student is far from ideal, what I've gotten to experience so far has been nothing short of incredible. I cannot think of too many other games out there that nail atmosphere as well as this series. The awe-inspiring art direction, along with the imaginative world design and soundtrack reflecting feelings of ambiance, mystery, and intrigue, all do wonders to immerse the player into the beautiful Metroid universe. Phendrana drifts, man, that shit's pure art. Regardless of whether the plane is 2D or 3D, the games all make it feel like you're the one exploring mysterious worlds like Talon 4 and Aether. Can't forget to cover the actual game design either. I rarely find myself getting lost and not knowing where I'm supposed to go in these games, since they do such a good job conveying where you can and can't go based on your current items, and also know how to convey your current destination through clever design as opposed to using an objective marker or railroading you. Gotta love those power-ups too. It's always super gratifying to obtain one, even if it does turn out pretty crappy, since they can completely alter how you play and allow the world to become that much more open, since you're given more tools to go where you couldn't before. Going from semi-equipped bounty hunter stuck in the midst of everything wanting to kill you, to OP badass tearing everything to shreds is one of the best feelings ever. I genuinely believe Metroid is a franchise one should experience if they have any interest in game design. Even if it isn't your thing, it's hard for one to not appreciate all of the heart and effort that makes the series as influential as it is for many other games out there. I'm happy to have properly jumped in right as things started to look up for the franchise after a pretty rough almost decade. Samus Returns was phenomenal, and I can only hope the same for Prime 4.
Lord Jesus above in heaven, I pray that thou hears my words and damns moneybags to hell for being a greedy douchebag. I mean, I'm agnostic, so that might work?
Hey, did you guys know that I like Spyro? In other news, grass is green, the sky is blue, and cats are liquid. As a kid, Spyro was one of those series I always wanted to get my hands on. I started out with the secret demos found on the PS1 Crash games before actually playing anything from Spyro. I sadly played the poopy games before the good ones, but hey, no use dwelling on that. In terms of 3D collectathon platformers, Spyro is and likely always will be pretty high among my all-time favorites. Even with your simple moveset of glide, charge, and breathe fire, what's actually built around said moveset is tons of fun more often than not. Levels thematically just explode with originality and imagination in pretty much every game, including the weaker ones. I can point out a vast array of levels that you probably wouldn't see all that often in other games, and even the levels based around tropes like desert, snow, or fire all have their own unique flair. Entering a stage always feels like you're visiting another world with different weird quirks that you couldn't find elsewhere, like satyrs playing bagpipes. I want this played at my funeral. The whole collectathon aspect of the games is executed beautifully. Getting every item, whether main collectible or even just a gem, is extremely satisfying, and I often find myself doing completionist playthroughs of a Spyro game because it's just that fun to me. The gameplay variations typically offered in the series go a long way in keeping everything fresh, whether it be minigames and challenges, additional abilities, or alternate playable characters that aren't Bentley the Yeti. Did I mention that the Spyro soundtrack is godlike? Because it is. Very. More so than any game out there, Spyro the Dragon makes me feel like I'm a child again. Every merit that Spyro has just brings out childlike feelings of wonder and joy within me, and I'm hoping that it maybe can do the same for other people in the future. In other words, if Spyro gets a remaster like Crash did, I will pre-order 20 copies and donate one of my kidneys. Or do a video wearing a dress again.
I doomed myself to the latter choice, didn't I?
I love 3D platformers, I love space, I love blowing shit up. That probably gave off some bad implications, and appropriately, I love Ratchet & Clank. It's hands down my favorite franchise associated with PlayStation, along with being my favorite platformer series. While it did initially start off on a pretty awkward and janky note if you ask me, pretty much everything was improved and expanded upon with each following game. Well, more often than not at least. The fusion of platforming and third-person shooting works like a dream. Control consistently feels right and accommodates the fusion of both radically different gameplay styles. Same can also be said for level design. The planets you visit in each game have a pretty healthy balance of platforming and shooting without overemphasizing either too much. It's made all the more fun with the wide assortment of weapons and gadgets at your disposal. There's so many guns that are just as imaginative and ridiculous as they are badass. The individual stats, upgrades, and overall satisfaction I get from using them pretty much ensure that no matter what Ratchet game I'm playing, my arsenal is always packed with useful tools of destruction where none go to waste. The visuals, in addition to being some of the most colorful and detailed on their respective platforms, perfectly reflect the overall tone of the franchise. I adore the humorous mood that Ratchet & Clank pretty much made a name for itself out of. Regardless of whether we're talking about the Saturday morning cartoon vibe given off by the PS2 games, or the Pixar DreamWorks-esque presentation of the PS3 games onward, all the games are full of charming, well-written characters and clever humor that can always put a smile on my face, especially with the more subtle adult-oriented humor that sometimes makes me question how most of the game skates by with just a T rating. For fuck's sake, the subtitle for the third game is, well, pretty obvious to anybody with functioning eyeballs.
I'll give you a hint. The word that it rhymes with, and listen up here, is anti-disestablishmentarianism.
It's really hard for me to find a Ratchet & Clank game I can say I outright hate. The more okay ones like Quest for Booty and Into the Nexus are at least fun for what they have to offer, and as much as I don't care for the original overall, it does have its moments. Though at the game's best, they end up being among my all-time favorites in the medium, especially A Crack in Time, which I wouldn't consider my absolute favorite game anymore, but it's still damn high up there. Not exactly sure what the future holds for the franchise, but I can assure you that as long as what comes along is good, I'm absolutely on board. Okay, we've almost reached the end, but before we get to number 1, here's some honorable mentions for other series I also really like. Jak and Daxter, Uncharted, The Legend of Zelda, Mass Effect, Saints Row, Kingdom Hearts, Sonic the Hedgehog, Infamous, and God of War.
If I were to travel back in time and say anything to myself in the past, it'd be that the game franchise you considered your favorite will be pretty out of the ordinary considering your tastes. And you'll never see it coming.
Yep, as of now, Persona is my favorite game franchise. Technically, it is a Shin Megami Tensei spin-off, but I'd say there's enough distance between both for Persona to be classified as its own separate entity. Plus, I haven't exactly played any mainline SMT game. Please don't kill me for being a filthy casual. It feels weird for somebody like me who isn't exactly that huge into turn-based RPGs to put such a franchise at the top, but I ain't complaining because, so good. The series is a fusion of dungeon crawler RPG and life sim where both are very much intertwined together. The former consists of turn-based combat as you travel through many different dungeons and palaces which all thematically tie into the characters and what each respective game is about. Along the way, collecting different personas for combat which functions kinda like Pokemon, albeit with figures present in various ancient mythologies and present-day religions like Christianity. The life sim aspect of the game has silent protagonists with anime haircuts live out regular life, going to school, taking part in after-school activities, working, chilling with friends across town, all of that pretty much. It all ties together perfectly, with the life sim portion having notable effects on the RPG side and vice versa. You're only given a set amount of in-game days to make the most out of what you can for both sides as the narrative progresses. Style just oozes from each game with the beautiful anime-like art style and some of the most badass video game music you'll ever be subjected to. Just listen to any track in the OST and try not to need a new pair of pants. Though what I love most about it by far are the story and characters, more so than any other game in fact. I could gush all day about the central story themes and how beautifully executed they are. They give each game their own distinct feel while setting in motion compelling narratives that never quite go the direction you expect and some of the most realistic and layered characters I've seen. There's yet to be a single main cast member I dislike or even don't care for. The side characters you meet through social links are great in their own ways, and the villains really know how to be sick bastards to the point where I love to hate them. I even find myself making personal connections to each game with numerous characters reminding me of how I am in real life, and how personal fears of mine are often at the forefront while being tackled by presenting a more optimistic and positive side to them. Even though I've only played 3 of the games, I can't name any other series that's been near the top of my favorites as consistently as Persona has. Everything I could ever want out of the game, this franchise has and exceeds at with flying colors, which I never expected from a game genre I barely even touched beforehand. All that's missing is the option to make my gay OTP shippings a reality.
Atlas. That option. In Persona 6. Will sell my soul for.